Hey guys, this is Courtney from Cosmic Clarity Astrology, and I'm here today to talk to you about all of the major transits in 2025. This is going to be a really big year, so we definitely want to buckle up. We have a ton of outer planets moving into different signs and some really big shifts that are going to happen on a societal level. If you are not in a good headspace, this is your trigger warning to click off the video, maybe watch it at a later date, because I'm going to talk very plainly about some of the things that I think will be shifting in the world over this next year and really over these next few decades and a few years, because a lot of the transits that we're experiencing now, a lot of shifts now, are going to be carried through for the next few years or even decades in some instances. So if you're not prepared, again, mentally for that, please come back at a later time. Okay, so I'm going to break this video up into different sections. We're going to be talking about the two retrograde planets that really make the biggest deal for us on a personal level, which is Mars and Venus retrograde. We're going to be talking about the nodes changing signs, which of course means that we're going to have eclipse seasons starting to shift into different signs. So we'll still have a little bit of lingering from Aries energy, but we're shifting signs into Virgo and Pisces. We're going to be talking about Pluto being in Aquarius for the next 20 years, which is already in Aquarius right now. Jupiter moving into Cancer, Saturn moving into Aries, Neptune moving into Aries, Saturn and Neptune conjunction, which I'm going to talk about in much more detail at a later date, and then Uranus moving into Gemini. So you can see that we have so much going on. And, I've been talking a lot about this with my friends, and one of the things that we keep saying is that we're making all these plans, but we're noticing that there's such massive shifts in society that are going to be happening. That's really hard to actually know if those plans are going to come to fruition or if there's going to be something major that disrupts our schedule and our ideas for our future. So I think that that's going to be one of the biggest things throughout this year, is to be agile, to be adaptable, to be willing to take certain risks or make certain changes, because we are going to be having so many really big shifts. Okay, so I'm going to have timestamps below, and I might even record this in different videos, put it together so that you can access kind of each thing as they come. If you want to watch all of it at once, go for it, but you can also skip around if we're at a different phase of the year when you're watching this. Okay, so I guess I'll start off with I'm going to start off with the nodes changing signs. So we are having the nodes change signs on January 11th, which is in a few days from when I'm recording this. We have had historically this last year and a half the North Node in Aries and the South Node in Libra. And the nodes are these faded points that represent kind of like a shift in society and a movement towards a specific direction. The North Node in particular will represent something that is going to be enhanced or even exaggerated in the time ahead. So people or industries that have that type of energy of that sign will often get a boost up. So for example, with the North Node being in Aries, Aries rules over things to do with war and to do with men. And so those things have kind of taken center stage. Whereas South Node is Libra, that's women. And we can see this past year, women have kind of taken a back, they've had certain issues come up. So basically, things that are related to the sign of the North Node can kind of go viral. They become more of a stronger presence in society, which is not always a good thing, because it can become exaggerated in a negative way as well. Whereas the South Node tends to diminish that area related to the sign. And it doesn't make it less popular, it just diminishes it somehow. So this could be through some kind of karmic downfall. So something coming to light in regards to that signs matter that has been like an kind of ongoing issue that people start kind of raging against at that time. There can be an oversaturation of that type of thing in the market. So for example, with Libra rules over the beauty industry, and we could see every celebrity and their mother started a beauty brand in 2023 and 2024. So that's the kind of thing where the market starts to become inundated with these same type of thing over and over again, and it can get excessive. That can happen both with the North and South Node, but with the South Node, we will start to see a decline typically in I guess, the quality of something, or there can be the degradation of the, you know, like the value of it somehow. So things that are also related to that sign in the south node can start to break down if they were built on an unstable foundation. Libra ruling relationships can show toxicity and breakdowns within relationships. So having the south node move through that sign, there was this last year and a half more likely to be, breakups of couples that just weren't really that high functioning. So this past year we had the rise of the 4B movement, which, if you don't know what that is, basically more women are deciding not to get married, not to have kids, that type of thing. And that became really, really popular in the US this past year, or maybe it was last year. And during the North Node in Aries, which is all about independence and the individual, and sometimes a little bit of selfishness and separation. We also had, of course, the war that was going on with Israel, the Hamas war, basically. There's also a loneliness epidemic, an increase in entrepreneurship, some trad wife content, which I feel like is kind of more centered around men and what men want. And, men had a lot of, I guess, more power this year, whereas women's reproductive rights, South Node Libra, really took a turn for the worse. There were also just less, I guess, support of women in certain instances, and they're even to downright like hate against women and attacks against women for no reason. So yeah, we can see how there are these support systems kind of in place to exaggerate and overemphasize North Node in Aries, and which is again kind of war and violence and men, or the South Node in Libra, the beauty industry. People saying that, oh, fillers aren't that good for you, and they actually do stay in your face forever, and they migrate all over your face. Like these things that were once seen as really a luxury and really great to have and make you look super great, they start to become talked about in a negative way when the South Node is in that sign. So that's what we can kind of expect when it comes to the South Node being in Virgo for this next year and a half. So I'll start off with that. So the South Node in Virgo, I personally think that we're going to have a lot of changes this next year, and any kind of resistance that we have to change and any type of desire to control something or to kind of hold on to an expectation of what something should be, those things are going to cause anxiety this year. And so I do think that anxiety is going to take a center stage, potentially mental health, because obviously, Virgo and Pisces both are very strongly related to mental health. And I think that people who have those struggles, who aren't able to adapt, are going to have more issues this year. I also think that perfectionism and kind of the way that we always try to maintain order or improve ourselves could show a sense of instability this year. And for example, like excessive diet culture. I know we can already see people losing a lot of weight with Ozempic, for example. I think we're going to start to see that ramp up even more. And then over the course of the next year and a half, we'll start to see some storylines of why is this actually negative for the body? What are some of the downsides, I guess, of this? I shouldn't say it's negative across the board, but excessive perfectionism is obviously really, really negative, and trying to look a certain way can be an extreme that we hold ourselves to at this time. Let's just focus on appearance, but it's really in any way, in any type of order, organization in our life. I think that as a counter to that, with the North Node Pisces, people will be making more content related to like having compassion and loving yourself exactly how you are. I think also that Virgo content could be really popular as well, like getting on a really good routine, or finding a really good job, or cleaning and organizing your house, how to structure your day. Those types of things I think will become really popular, but then eventually become oversaturated, and then people can start critiquing certain elements of it that have become toxic, like toxic productivity, for example. I think is definitely going to be on the rise this year with the North Node in Pisces. So Virgo does rule over our overall work system. And I do think with the South Node moving through the sign, a lot of people are going to lose their jobs, unfortunately. That might not happen. Knock on wood that it doesn't. But I do kind of feel like a lot of people will lose their jobs, and there is going to be some issues regarding like how employees are treated, how work is, I guess, distributed in the United States, and what that looks like, how much people are paid, the organization of things, even like the schedule and where you work from. Like, are you going to the office? How much time do you spend driving? How much time do you have with your family? Especially with Jupiter moving into Cancer, we're going to start asking ourselves those questions. And I think that there is going to be, again, a sign or like a way that we're able to see the toxicity that exists within our current work system. The healthcare system, Virgo is also very much connected with health. So I think we could also see that same thing start to happen where karmic kind of retribution starts to come back in the area of our healthcare system. We can already start to see this now. People are already complaining about how much they're paying and they're really not getting much out of it, or they're going into medical debt, and people are going to start revolting. I mean, we have a whole thing on that later. But yes, healthcare system is obviously a really big issue. Issues around food, issues on the gut, which Virgo rules the enteric nervous system. Issues around kind of like the slave and master dynamic, because Virgo or sixth house energy represents the slave, which is basically like our modern workforce. We're getting paid very little. We're working a lot. We don't have a lot of creative freedom. So I think that those are going to be the questions that people are going to be thinking about. You know, do I have to be a part of this? And do I want to be a part of this? What are the issues with this? I think that also we need to be very careful around like the wolf in sheep's clothing. And I think that this is also attributed to having the North Node in Pisces, which can be a little bit sometimes too trusting. And there can be certain narratives that are pushed that are not always accurate, but that appear accurate on the surface. And so with the North Node in Pisces, we have to be very discerning about who we are trusting, or if there is some kind of, you know, cunning influence here where somebody is strategically using certain things to their advantage and to our disadvantage as a collective. So the North Node of Pisces is about stepping into those kind of Jupiterian themes, which is a lot about, you know, spirituality and expansion and coming to like a greater connection with the people around us. So I think many people who are involved in industries related to this could see an uptick or an advancement in those industries, as well as Neptune, which is a modern ruler of Pisces, Neptune related industries. So these are things like film, creative industries, you know, any type of media, art, all those things are going to have some kind of enhancement this year, which is going to be really helpful, or a year and a half. It's going to be helpful because we've been having so much going on with AI taking over the art space that I think whatever is going to happen with these eclipses is likely going to maybe set some boundaries or rights around art or artistry, or maybe create different types of media. So I think that there's going to be some avenues that can be enhanced as a result of this, which I think, again, is quite positive given what's going on. The spiritual industries as well could also have some kind of uptick, especially as people are losing trust in more of like our modern day government and our modern day media and all these institutions that are traditionally here to support us. I think that many of us are going to be turning to ourselves and our spiritual practices to be a source of, I guess, stability, like inner emotional stability in our lives. Ultimately, a North Node of Pisces is about trusting, about letting go, about flowing. And a lot of this is because we're going to go through periods of liminal phases and loss and change. And I think a lot of this is because we are kind of in a transition as a society, as a country, if you're from the US like me. And I think, again, a lot of people are probably going to be losing their jobs or are going to be in big life transitions at this point in time with these eclipses. And I think there could be a lot of scarcity around that as a result. I think we can have a lot of different mindsets. Some are going to be overly optimistic, where you're able to see kind of the rose-colored glasses and trust whatever is coming your way. And then other people, I think, are going to be in a scarcity mindset where they're going to feel like there's not enough. There's not enough food, there's not enough money, there's not enough jobs to go around. And so I think that we're going to be all kind of wanting solid ground, but with the South Node in Virgo, the South Node in the Earth sign, where the solid ground beneath us is kind of diminishing. I think that we are going to be called towards more stillness. I don't think that's going to last, however, because we are going to have Uranus move into Gemini. So I think it's more so going to be kind of these first few months of the year where Mars is retrograde and then Venus is retrograde. I feel like it's a good time for us to kind of be a little bit stiller and focus on, again, maybe a development of our spiritual path or our internal path. I think that some people with the North Node being in Pisces will get caught up in what people call limerence, which is kind of where we like idealizing people finding love and getting kind of swept up into romance to find something that feels really good, for example. And I the thing with limerence is that it's not always coming from a place of grounded reality. It's not always like the best person for us. It's often a mode of escaping. And I think that many of us can be prone to escapism during the North Node in Pisces, and people are a way that we can do that. So be careful about that. I think that ultimately any kind of escapism needs to be, I guess, encouraged in a healthy way and discouraged in an unhealthy way. Things like fantasy worlds, or reading books or going to the movies, those things I think will increase during this time, and even drugs as well, unfortunately. Because I think our overall mental health as a society will come into focus, and those tend to be helpful coping mechanisms for the most part, but when used in excess, they are not. And so I think we're going to have to kind of confront that. Ultimately, I think we're going to be feeling much more deeply as a society, though we are going to have, Saturn and Neptune move into Aries, which I think is going to create some difficult emotions like irritability, frustration with one another, frustration with our current circumstances in the government, and this feeling of being in a rush and not getting ahead in life as much as we would like to, things like that. So water-related issues. I definitely think if you look back also at kind of what was going on last time, the nodes were in Pisces. Did I write that down? No. So I thought I did. Okay. Anywho, I was looking at last time the nodes were in Pisces, and one of the things that kind of like these major events that were happening, one of the things that was going on was these mudslides. So we can see things like this happening, which are water-based issues. So obviously a mudslide happens because we have excess rain at that time and loose soil or whatever. We could also see things like earthquakes that result in, tidal waves or tsunamis. We could see things like droughts occurring, especially with Saturn moving into Aries. There could be a lot more susceptibility to fires as a result of having a drought. So there could be either excess or too little water, but water-related issues in general, snowstorms, things like that. We got to kind of watch out for those things. We also have to watch out for the distortion of spiritual practices and ideologies. So things like cults, for example, or certain practitioners who are pushing certain ideologies that are maybe a little bit demented or a little bit unethical or imbalanced. We have to watch out for that. We have to be really careful around what is true and what is false, because I think there's going to be a lot of narratives constructed online that we're not going to really have a full sense of what is fact. And I hope that Uranus moving into Gemini will help us through that process kind of develop maybe certain tools or mechanisms for weeding out, what's AI and what's human, what's constructed narrative and propaganda versus what is an actual fact that we can then make our own opinions with. I think that we could have also some more diversity occurring, some more kind of progressive movements in certain ways, especially with Pluto and Aquarius. I'm not totally sure what that's going to look like, but we're going to talk about that more with Pluto and Aquarius. And then obviously a focus on Pisces topics like healing, regeneration, and renewal. So I definitely think like mental and physical health is going to play a really big role in this next year. And we have eclipse season taking place in March and September. So these are the months where we're going to really feel the nodes the most on a personal and societal level. So March 14th and 25th, and then September 7th and 21st are the 4 eclipses. We're going to have 2 in Virgo, an Aries eclipse, and then a Pisces eclipse. So be on the lookout for a video on those where I go over those for all the signs, but we're going to talk about that later. All right, up next we're going to talk about the retrogrades that I feel like are the most important this year, which are Venus and Mars. So we are currently in a Mars retrograde. I already have a video out about this, so I'm not going to go super into detail on either of these because I'm going to make separate videos about them specifically for all the signs. So again, if you haven't seen that, definitely check out my Mars retrograde. It's currently retrograding, and we are actually at 29 degrees of Cancer, where Mars is right now, at this time that I'm recording it. And it's going to be retrograding through Cancer until February 23rd of 2025. So during a Mars retrograde, we generally don't want to be starting a bunch of new projects. We want to be finishing up projects. We want to be going back and revising or redoing things that we've already thought about. Or we want to be kind of considering how we want to maybe move differently through our life, the different types of actions or behaviors we can take. So this is a time where we are going to be more reflective, especially on kind of the influence of our family and our loved ones and our past and our emotional side, like how those all link up with our behaviors, and if we still are feeling empowered in our choices or if we're feeling negatively influenced by those forces. Venus retrograde is going to be happening from March 1st until April 12th, and it's going to be retrograding from 10 degrees of Aries to 24 degrees of Pisces. So Venus retrograde is usually not a very good time for financial matters or for relationship matters, especially relationship matters. Venus already doesn't like to be in the sign of Aries, so to have it here and then retrograding through this sign, I definitely think that if some people are in unstable relationships, those issues could very much come to the surface. People's issues around maybe being selfish, which a lot of us have been with the North Node in Aries, and then Saturn moving into Aries, we're having a lot of self-focus and development of the self. If that has any way put a strain on relationships, that will come to the surface during this retrograde period as well. So definitely look out for that. I think that many of us are going to be having some things be illuminated during Venus retrograde, also when it goes through Pisces, because usually Venus and Pisces is super, it likes to be here. It likes to feel in love. It likes to be swept off its feet and believe that people are the best and that people are who they say that they are. But when Venus moves backwards to that sign, there could be some revelations that not everything was what you thought it was. So you can take a look at what houses these planets are moving through to get a better sense of kind of what areas of life you might see issues crop up. And you want to probably avoid making really major relationship decisions or work decisions during these retrogrades. So for Venus, you want to avoid relationship decisions. Mars retrograde, you want to avoid big work decisions or project decisions that are new things. Like you don't want to start a new relationship or a new project during that time. And you don't want to maybe make, let's just say that. You don't want to start the new things because it makes sense to go back and make certain decisions around changing up certain things or ending a relationship. So that actually does make sense. But the totally new start with something doesn't. Okay, up next we have Pluto in Aquarius. So Pluto is currently in Aquarius. It's been kind of moving back and forth throughout the sign with Capricorn, but now it is fully in Aquarius from when this video goes out until like 2044, 2030, 2043, 44. So it spends 20 years essentially in the sign of Aquarius, and this is going to instigate some very, very big societal shifts for us. I do have a separate video completely on this, so if you want to go ahead and watch that, I actually filmed it with my friend Taryn, who's a really great astrologer. Highly recommend her, so definitely check that video out. You can search my channel, Pluto in Aquarius. Okay, let's start talking about the last time Pluto was in Aquarius, because I think that this is going to play into how the US, in my opinion, is slowly kind of going through its downfall. I mean, its potential, it does have a potential to regenerate, but we were founded on Pluto and Aquarius. This was the time of the American Revolution back in, 1776 and 1777. Pluto was in Aquarius in that 1777 period. And this is when we decided to leave Britain and kind of have our own rebellion. We didn't want to pay those tea taxes or whatever the history was. I'm sure you guys know more around that. But there is a sense of breaking from the traditional institutions that have become oppressive over the years and starting our new system of our own. That is what the US was founded on. If you're not American, I'm sorry that I'm going into all this because this might not be super personal to, your history. However, we are all going to experience Pluto and Aquarius, where there is a sense of rebellion that is innately going to happen during this time. So I, again, think that this is going to slowly kind of lead to the potential downfall of an empire, because I'll do a whole separate video on that. Anyway, Aquarius is a sign that is concerned with the everyday people, the proletariats, I guess you would say, versus the bourgeoisie. Am I saying that right? Let me know in the comments below. So there is this class war that we can start to already feel coming to a head. And really, Pluto just settled into Aquarius, and it's going to be here for 20 years. So we know that that guy, the CEO of, what is it, United Healthcare, was shot, for example. We can see how people are taking the power into their own hands and lashing out against people in power, these authoritative structures that have created such a stifling environment to live in, such an oppressive environment that we don't have the money that we need, that we don't have the tools that we need to succeed. We can't even access basic medical care. And this is what our taxes go to. Obviously, I have my own opinions that are a little bit more nuanced about all this, and I'm not going to try to go super political. But what I'm trying to say is that there is clear discrepancies between the haves and have-nots that are going to become more pronounced, and people are not just going to sit by and watch it anymore. As Pluto moves into Aquarius, we kind of get this this bug right underneath our skin where we're like, I have to pick a bone with you. I have to address this. And people become more rebellious, which is why it was linked with the start of the United States, where we decided we wanted to fracture what we were as a solid unit and become separate in order to create a greater sense of freedom and individuality. And that is what Pluto and Aquarius is about. And I think that we might not be able to necessarily have that same, case, that same, we don't have all this land that I feel like people are going to be moving to, right? It's not like that. And not that it wasn't occupied. Anyway, we're not going to go there. But I think that Aquarius has a lot to deal with creating almost like networks of resistance groups, or groups of like-minded people and individuals that have the same kind of mentality, where they are going to be breaking off into different factions. That is what I think our systems could end up becoming as a result of this. That is a solution in certain ways to what we're currently experiencing. Ultimately, Aquarius is concerned with the people, and this means that we are very focused on equality. We are focused on everybody getting their needs met. There is an essential humanitarian effort to Aquarius. And so if there is something that needs to be fought for example, like wage inequality or whatever else that could fall into, I mean, there's so many different inequalities that are happening. These are all going to result as movements, especially when it comes to, I think, the healthcare system, because I often see Aquarius very strongly linked with that. But not just the healthcare system. I also think the education system and the banking system are going to be some of the biggest ways that we have kind of our ability to renovate those areas of our country. And it's going to look like a completely different country 20 years from now. One of the biggest things about Pluto and Aquarius is that it is going to kind of show the dark sides of technology. Pluto is the god of the underworld, and it takes us to that place when it's in a sign. It was in Capricorn, and it really showed us the abuses of authoritative systems in many countries with Pluto and Aquarius. It showed how people have come to power and abuse that power. Now that Pluto's moving into Aquarius, this kind of highlighting of the insidious nature of something is now through technology. So issues around privacy is going to be huge, like being under surveillance. Right now, we're under constant surveillance. And I think that people don't realize actually how much they are giving up their autonomy, or sorry, their privacy, participating in certain things, like just using your phone, on an app on your phone, or even doing a DNA test to see, what's my lineage. People's relatives are getting put in jail as a result of that. And they didn't even have their blood tested. So true privacy, I think, is going to become almost non-existent. I also think that AI is developing so rapidly that we're already seeing it removing people from their jobs. We're already seeing it become so prevalent online that the first thing you search for is going to be AI, and you have to dig to see an actual person's post in certain instances, or, on Google or on Pinterest. They're all AI generated images, and the first thing that pops up on Google is an AI generated response that's pulling from other people's websites that they worked hard to create. So we're having this loss of labor, essentially, loss of value of human effort. And in many ways, that's going to advance us very quickly, because we're going to have, highly nuanced and, like information available to everybody at the tip of their fingers. People are able to access things that they wouldn't have been able to come up with on their own. However, it is going to start to erase people. And from this point, the only way that humans will be able to move forward, it's my belief, is to have some type of singularity where AI or computers and humans become one somehow. That is the direction that I believe we're moving in. That is very scary to me, and something that I have been scared of since I was a little girl, thinking a lot about artificial intelligence. I don't know why, but I have felt this time coming for so long, and now we are here. And so it is very concerning to me. Just the whole internet is like the Wild West, and there are no parameters, there are no boundaries to the internet and to AI in particular, and how this is going to affect us, because we can have very advanced bots or people with social media presence, people like AI people with social media presence, and we're not going to be able to tell like what's a real human response or what's a real human video versus not a real person. There's going to be deep fakes where they're going to take my voice, because I have all these videos online, and my face, and make content and say that I committed a crime or I did something, and I won't be able to, I'm sure there'll be ways to prove it later, but right now people won't be able to necessarily distinguish what is real from what is fake, what is AI from what's a real person. So I think that we're going to have these huge advancements in technology, and at the same time abuse and really certain issues. Many issues arise on a complete societal level as a result of this technology. Who knows what's going to happen with people's work? What are we going to be doing? I also think space, Aquarius rules like what is extraterrestrial. So I definitely think that we're going to be going out into space. I definitely think so. And I think that's going to become maybe even like a part of our everyday life, where people just casually go up to Mars. It might take a little bit, but Pluto and Aquarius moves quite rapidly, so probably not as long as we think it's going to take. I already mentioned the reconstruction of our societal systems, banking, education, healthcare. I think we are moving towards something that is decentralized. So I think that cryptocurrency is kind of like a little symbol of what is to come, how we are going to be moving from have like things being run by institutions, for example, going to university, to learning something online, or even having like a central hub where things are allowed, maybe even free for everybody. Who knows what that's going to look like? I mean, the internet's already like that, but I think things are going to start to shift where we're not valuing these traditional institutions as much anymore. Even things like marriage. I think we're going to start to look at what is authentic to us, and that might not be these inherited systems and ideologies and ways of doing things. I think that we are going to have just completely new social reform, and that means that these traditional expectations and definitions of things are all going to shift, and we can already start to see that with, you know, shifting gender roles or an idea of what even gender is, for example. So ultimately, I think the whole idea is to become more free, to become more of an individual, more authentic, to break off from oppressive structures and to redefine who we are as a people. I think that process is going to be convoluted. I think it's going to be challenging. I think it's going to be painful ultimately. But I think the end of it has the potential to be positive, though I do worry about the technological aspect of it because of how I think it's already in many ways just totally changed us as people. Like, I'm recording this right now. My coffee or my tea is sitting on an electric heater. Like, everything is infused with technology. So what happens when that accelerates drastically? That does scare me. So yeah, I'm really curious what you guys think about Pluto and Aquarius, because we have 20 years of this, 20 years to completely change. And I really want to know how you guys already see this impacting you and where you think it's going to go. All right, next we have Neptune in Aries. So Neptune spends about 14 years in a sign, and it's going to be moving into Aries March 30th, 2025 until October 22nd, 2025. It will dip back into Pisces for a little bit and then return to Aries from January 26, 2026 to May 21st of 2020 or 2038, 2039. It's going to kind of move back and forth again at that time. So basically from March 2025 until sometime around 2039, we're going to be having Neptune in Aries. This is a really big and significant shift, obviously, because a 14-year cycle is going to represent these as kind of massive chapter within society. So if you know somebody, I mean, they're probably not alive anymore. They're not alive anymore. But if you know somebody from the generations of 1861 to 1874, that was the last time Neptune was in Aries. So what do we have to look for with this? Well, the concern with this is that the day that Neptune moved into Aries, well, I guess the next day, technically, April 13th, 1861, we had a battle at Fort Sumter. So this is basically when the U.S. Civil War started. So what does this tell us? Aries is a sign of war. Neptune is a planet concerned with ideologies. And Neptune and Jupiter are both similar in that sense, though Neptune has more of an impact because, again, it stays in a sign for 14 years, whereas Jupiter stays in a sign for 1 year. So there are really strong ideologies that form when Neptune moves through a sign. And Neptune has been moving through Pisces for the last 14 years. And it's going to shift really radically because Neptune is at home in Pisces. It feels really comfortable in this sign. Neptune is a planet that's concerned with compassion and seeing beyond the self, and also this kind of like nebulousness and being okay with things that don't have maybe constructs or boundaries around them. So for example, with Neptune moving through Pisces, we saw people kind of redefining what our gender and what our identity is, and like what's my name, what do you call me, all those things become really different. And it's because Neptune in Pisces creates that ability to be open, I guess, to things that are less defined than before, definitely less traditional, though that's more of an Aquarius thing. So having no labels, being in a liminal phase is very much Neptune and Pisces. So I think many of us as a country have kind of had more of a susceptibility to be a little bit more open and compassionate and good with that nebulousness. But also, I think it has led as well to people losing their sense of agency in many ways and taking accountability for things. Neptune and Pisces can create this feeling of like surrender to the unpredictable aspects of life. We just have to go with the flow. We have to trust. And that's a really beautiful thing. And again, I think that has created this sensitivity to the people, especially born in the last 14 years, but our children, the sensitivity there where they are maybe more concerned with, eating animals versus not, or mindfulness, or, spirituality, or connecting to other types of people and cultures and energy work and being really, again, compassionate and understanding. So there's all this kind of openness there and softness there. But that also has this negative side of, again, losing one's sense of individuality, losing your sense of agency and autonomy. We can kind of feel like we're a sailboat being pushed with the tides and pushed with the wind. And I think that this is a time when Neptune moves into Aries where we are waking up. Like we've been in this slumber. We've been in this passive state where we've kind of just been reacting to what's in front of us and whatever that has looked like for us personally. And I think we're starting to get our say back. And again, because this also historically coincided with the Civil War, I think that we can start to see that people are going to be waking up in a way where we're taking our power back and we're going to start to be willing to fight for some of the ideologies, Neptune, for some of the beliefs, Neptune, that are really being trampled against. So again, the Civil War took place so that we could end slavery. And that was the moral high ground. So with Neptune moves into Aries, with Neptune was in Pisces, we established maybe what that moral high ground is. And then when it moves into Aries, we have to then defend it. We have to then take a stand and put action into making this something legitimized within our society or within our government. So I think that people are going to be coming into a phase of, again, taking action, because Aries is a cardinal sign. It's the first sign of the zodiac. It's also a fire sign. So it has this kind of mobilizing type of energy. One of the things that I think it could do is it could show really where people are fed up with something and where there is maybe a certain amount of divide, and it could potentially exacerbate those things in order to resolve them. Saturn and Neptune are going to come together on February of 2026, and this is going to be very, very momentous. I'm going to talk about that later, and I think I will have a whole separate video on that I've even started recording already. So the positives of Neptune moving into Aries is that I think that people are going to no longer just make excuses. I think they're going to start taking steps on things that they've always really wanted. If they've been a little bit more passive, like, oh, I'll do that one day, I can see Neptune and Aries, people, again, mobilizing themselves and being more adventurous and taking more risks for themselves. People will also be likely to be a little bit more passionate, and this can translate into a lot of different ways. This could be passionate for certain ideologies and for a fight, but this could also be centrally, wanting more partners, things of that nature. I think that ultimately we are going to be connecting to spirituality within the individual rather than these, again, institutions or this like prescription of like, this is what you should believe. This is who you should follow. This is who you should give your power to. We're taking that back and placing it in the hands of the individual. I think that we are going to be, there's a lot of predictions I have for society, but it's hard to say it's like from one transit. So make sure you watch the Pluto in Aquarius predictions, because I think that the ones in Neptune are the same as that, so I'm not going to repeat them now. So if we need to stand up for ourselves, Neptune in Aries is going to incite that need for change. And Aries is about entrepreneurship and the individual. So I do think that we could potentially, as a society, move over these next 14 years into more kind of like, I just think that more people will be attracted to solo working somehow, or being consultants where they are not maybe necessarily the same as an employee, where you kind of go and you are completely dictated, like this is your schedule and this is how something should look. I think that more people might feel their empowerment to become like a contractor or a consultant that is hired on for a specific scope, and they have a little bit more of their own freedom and their own say in how their workflow goes or what their day looks like. That is my prediction, but I think that could take some time for that to happen. Entrepreneurship could also be a version of that. I think we're going to have a lot of new advancements and changes within the film industry because Neptune rules over film. So anything Aries related talks about something new, something that is groundbreaking. So we could literally have some type of new technology or something that shows film in a new way. And this might have to deal with, I mean, we probably don't know what it is yet, but if, from what I can think of what exists now, those, the virtual reality could become more of how we kind of interact, or a bigger part of film or our lives somehow. So I can really see some major shifts happening. People going and sitting at the movie theater, that could change, for example. That could become a new type of experience as a result of Neptune and Aries. I do think that people are going to take more risks also when it comes to things like entertainment and film. And I don't know if that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing. I think that people will be ambitious, which I think will be nice in certain ways. With this Neptune being Pisces, there's been a lot of passivity. Some of the negatives on this, I think that Neptune and Aries can make us very focused on survival, and especially with Saturn also moving into the sign, this is a little scary to me because it's like, okay, we are losing faith. We're losing faith in maybe God or humanity, and we're having to focus on ourselves, every man for themselves, survive for your own interest type of thing. I think that people could be very impulsive when it comes to what they believe or their ideologies or what they're willing to fight for or their reactions to things. I think that things can get blown out of proportion really easily. Neptune is prone to distortion and to lies and deception. And so with this being in Aries, it's like, oh, I'm going to shoot first, think later. And that it could be a very scary thing when it comes to society as a whole and countries reacting to one another. I think that we could be a lot less compassionate. I think that we're already not that compassionate in certain ways, especially online. And I think that that's going to become a little bit more divisive. We can become a little bit more, scrutinizing of people or giving people less leeway, less understanding around certain things that they've done. I think that also the ambitious side of people could itself become distorted and get the best of people, and they could really start to lose their integrity of what is right and what is wrong. I think that also Neptune and Pisces is so concerned with the slowness and the taking care of oneself and the having compassion and the gentle parenting. And with Neptune and Aries, I think things could shift a lot. And there is a focus on having to push through, to survive, to endure, to come out on top. And it's not necessarily a gentle energy. And if you think about, again, last time Neptune was in Aries during a civil war, I'm sure it wasn't gentle at that time. That's just not the energy. It's not a cocoon. It's a coming out of the cocoon and figuring it the F out or you're going to die kind of thing. I think there could be a little bit less focus on relationships and a little bit more focus on the self, which could lead to some sense of separation or isolation, especially through things like media or technology. I think that people will be also impulsive in the sense that they're going to be more willing to walk away from things. And this is probably the most negative side around Neptune and Aries is the sense of like not being maybe attached to things in a healthy way. So giving up too easily, abandoning plans, changing things, walking away from things. I think that that is a useful trait, but when in excess, it could be very detrimental because nothing can fully form or build if you walk away from it. So this is one of the downsides that I think I'm not looking forward to. People being defensive or their ego kind of being wrapped up in what they believe. I think this could increase cancel culture, online harassment, finding scapegoats. I think that this is all going to increase when Neptune is in Aries. And I think that potential class issues like the haves and have-nots can take on a new life, can go to a new level at this time as well. So if you have anything that you want to add to Neptune and Aries, please let me know down below. I think the ultimate purpose of Neptune is our spiritual beliefs, and we're going to start to believe more in ourselves as spiritual individuals. And I think that that's one of the gifts of having Neptune enter Aries. We could have new kind of philosophies emerge, new ways of viewing the world and of life, and some clashes against different philosophical or ideological views as a result of strong belief systems. All right, up next we have Saturn in Aries, which is going to be moving into Aries from May 24th, 2025, and will stay there for 2.5 years, where it will leave in April of 2028. We're going to have it dip back into Pisces on August 31st of this year, and it will only remain in Pisces from August to February of 2026. So basically from May 2025 to April 2028, we're going to have Saturn in Aries. So Saturn is in its fall in Aries. A planet in its fall is known to say it's like has a fall from grace in some kind of way. We have had a lot of encouragement, like a boost to Aries because of the North Node in that sign. So I do think that Aries individuals are going to be going through certain challenges of their own as a result of no longer having the North Node in their sign and now having Saturn and Neptune move into their sign. Both these planets can be really good for them, but I think that they can also feel sometimes, initially at least, challenging. A planet in its fall, like Saturn and Aries, is very concerned with trying to kind of build itself back up. It doesn't have all of its normal resources. It doesn't feel like itself in that sign. And so it's kind of starting from a lower degree and having to work its way up again. So there are potentials for us to feel like we are pulling ourselves up by the bootstrap, really trying to survive, really trying to get down to kind of the basics or the brass tacks of something, and overcome things without a lot of resources, without a lot of support. It could feel like, kind of like you're wanting to advance your life, that you are wanting to assert yourself to go make something happen, but your family doesn't believe in you, or your country doesn't have the resources to give you. There's a sense of being really on your own, and Saturn is already a very lonely planet. So in a sign like Aries, there is even more individuality and self-reliance here, to the point of maybe feeling isolated, or sometimes even becoming like a little bit hardened or ruthless in our need to take care of ourselves and get ahead and survive. There can be a way that many of us are more easily responsible during this time. We might be more easily self-disciplined at this time as well, because Saturn is moving from a water sign to a fire sign. It's moving from passive Pisces into action-oriented Aries. So I think many of us are going to step into leadership roles and occupy those with greater sense of comfort and ease. I think we'll also be able to be better with our boundaries and our assertiveness that will help us kind of maintain our standing, maintain our ground, and protect ourselves. Obviously, this comes with its own set of issues, because then we also have the potential of war and conflict and divisiveness, which I think is going to be one of the main themes for these next like 3 years, really. I am concerned about a war happening in these next 3 years. I don't know who will be involved. I know that there's already war going on in globally, but I think that, in terms of the US, that is definitely something that I feel like is potentially on the horizon. I know I said definitely potentially, but I say potentially because you can never know for sure, but there are a lot of signs pointing in that direction. You can already see the unrest in the United States alone. That's why I said at the beginning of this video, this warning, if you're not ready for this, if this is too intense, click off and watch it another time. I think that some things we're going to be working on with Saturn and Aries is, again, war, conflict. I think we're also going to have a heavy emphasis, again, on discipline, like I mentioned. I think many of us at the end of the day are going to be challenging and redefining what authority is. And I think that this is definitely going to challenge men in particular because Aries rules over men. So I think that men are really going to find that they are at some kind of deficit, or they really need to harden themselves, or they need to kind of work up to something or improve something in their life through effort. And this could be forced upon them. Like if you drafted into a war, that's forced upon you, for example, or it could be something that they are encouraged to do through, outside circumstances. So if women, for example, are pulling back our energy availability for men, then Saturn and Aries can show that there is some work to be done there. But Saturn can also indicate the potential for like abuse or negativity. So there could be authority figures or men that do come across as, powerful and dominating in a negative way. So there can be, again, you can see that through war, where there is one side that takes over the other side in any form. It doesn't just have to be with men and women, but any kind of form at all. And so I think that we're definitely going to see that with Saturn and Aries, is this type of control. And there could even be some form of like military control, like the militia, or if I really hope that it doesn't go to that kind of extreme, but there are potentials for issues that are very much concerning, like the guns and the army and the defense systems and the military just overall, that I think are going to be highlighted at this time in a potentially negative way, in a way that could, negatively impact people, is what I'm trying to say. On a personal level, we are meant to be revolutionizing the way that we take action towards our goals and our work in particular. This is us believing in ourselves and developing a greater sense of confidence. Entrepreneurship can really take off, and any kind of solo work, solo ventures are really encouraged because we are meant to be building ourselves up as leaders and individuals. I think that many of us will also be kind of working through familial karma, especially with Jupiter also moving through Cancer. And there is going to be some stuff that comes up around freedom versus restriction. And I think that this could, again, relate to the government, perhaps, or institutions or authorities. There could be definitely something going on here with freedom versus restriction, because Aries wants to be the dictator of its own life. And there could be some blockages around that, where other people get to dictate things for you. The last time Saturn was in Aries was back in 1996. So if you can think about what was going on for you, I think it moved into there April 7th, 1996. For me, I was like 3 years old, and my parents were getting divorced at that time. So this, I think, is a really great personal example of Saturn and Aries, because there's a sense of separation. Aries is, again, people going off on their own, doing their own thing, taking care of themselves. And that's what my parents were doing at that time. Wherever Saturn is moving, we are typically having to work harder or meet certain challenges. So if you are having Saturn in Aries, and you look back to what was going on in 1996, you might see some themes repeated here. So there could be some family stuff come up for me, for example. Ultimately, I think that the difficulty of Saturn is that Saturn and Aries really can want to be the person that reinvents the system, because Aries wants progress. Aries wants to be the very first person to ever do something, to break ground. But Saturn is really ruled over by institutions and traditions and the way that things have always been. So that's why another reason why Saturn doesn't like to be in the sign. So I think that Saturn and Aries can sometimes struggle because it both needs to work within the system and it needs to break ground and create newness in that very same system. So it's almost like having to redo the system and live within it. And I think that can be very challenging for Saturn and Aries. Another element of this is that Saturn loves to be in Libra because it's justice driven. Whereas in Aries, it's war driven and it's driven to success regardless of the impact of others. And I think that this could be, again, to our detriment through these next 2.5 years. I think that obviously we need it because we're having this transit for a reason as a collective. But I think that it's going to feel uncomfortable to go through periods of separation and division within our own communities, our own countries, our own families. Saturn is also a slow planet. It likes to make very conservative decisions. Aries is a very fast-moving sign. It's very impulsive and impatient, and it wants to act now, and it wants results yesterday. So Saturn in the sign is very uncomfortable. So many of us can feel that level of discomfort where in some ways we want to move forward very quickly, but in other ways we also feel like we are getting maybe some negative responses or outcomes as a result of making quick decisions. So we can feel the karmic reality of Saturn in the sign, where if we are moving very fast or moving very impulsively, we are having consequences, negative consequences as a result of that. And so some of us can feel this pressure to speed up, this pressure to slow down, and this kind of push and pull in between throughout this year that I think can make us a little bit more uncomfortable. Saturn is also, again, about conservative action. Aries is about adventure, newness, and taking risks. So we're also going to have this push and pull between here. And the best way to use this is calculated risk. You know, I don't want to just completely throw this whole thing away or completely take this huge risk without having any kind of scaffolding or support system. Let me do this in a very calculated and conservative, but still risky way, if that makes sense. I think that one of the biggest things that we're going to have to look out for is our well-being when Saturn is in Aries, because Aries is very accident prone. And this could be because, you know, if we're at war, obviously people are going to get hurt. But it also could be simply that people are taking more, again, not calculated risks, and they are dying because they, you know, drove too fast, which I'm probably guilty of. Or they're going on a skydiving trip and the thing was faulty, the what is it? The parachute. So stuff like that, where people are going to have more potential for accidents and for risks. If you have Aries in your chart, you want to be very careful when Saturn's passing over that planet as well, because health-wise that can indicate certain challenges. So ultimately, the whole purpose of Saturn in Aries is to put responsibility on the individual and on the masculine energy of our lives. We are all containing of masculine energy, regardless of whatever gender you are. So I think ultimately we are going to be taking things into our own hands. One of the things that I think could come out of this potentially is also a higher level of narcissism and selfishness and ego, which I think is the downside. But for those who are more balanced, they will notice that they can grow and develop their sense of self-worth, their confidence, their autonomy, and their belief that they can do hard things on their own. For those who are already kind of full of all that, they might go into the negative headspace with Saturn and Aries. So that's what I'm seeing with this. But let's jump into what Saturn and Neptune and Aries are going to look like together. And I'm, again, going to do a whole separate video on this as well. Okay, so we're going to be talking about Saturn and Neptune coming into a conjunction in Aries. This technically doesn't make an exact conjunction until February 20th, 2026, and that will be the only time of the exact conjunction. However, we're going to be noticing these energies even in the spring and the summer of 2025 and onwards. So this is kind of crazy because this is a very rare transit and it's happening exactly at 0 degrees of Aries. So it's the first degree of the first sign of the zodiac. And both of these planets coming together have the energy of a complete and total reset or reboot. And again, this is a very rare transit. The last time this transit happened was 1989 when the Berlin Wall fell. So we can see how there is a sense of starting over and starting from a fresh slate, ground zero, essentially, with, the first degree of the first sign happening when these planets come together. Saturn is often involved in these major chapters in society where something is either built or destroyed. And Neptune is often linked with the dissolving of something and going into a phase of transition where we are needing to reimagine something. So as a society, we're going to have the potential collapse of a system that has been in place long standing in some kind of way. And many of us on a personal level are going to be going through a time where we are going through a phase of reinvention and spiritual awakening. In particular, I feel like there is going to be a loss of faith or hope or purpose or meaning or connection in something in our life that we have been really invested in, that we have maybe identified as, we have maybe, had this as like a part of our personality or foundational pillar in our life. If this is impacting your chart on a personal level, so especially if you have any planets around 0 degrees of the cardinal signs, Aries, Libra, Capricorn, and Aries, Libra, Capricorn, and Cancer. Sorry, just blinking for a second. If you have any planets around 0 degrees there, it will square or oppose this conjunction or conjunct it if you have an Aries. And this is going to impact you on a deeply personal level. So what will happen, let me give you an example. Let's say you've always been a doctor. You might have something that creates a crisis of faith around the institution of the medical systems that you're a part of. Or on a personal level, you might find that you are no longer deriving meaning from the work that you're doing, and you're starting to question things on a deep and soul existential level. There will be a kind of inner calling to rise up and take the lead with something to make an end to this or transform this or end and move into a new kind of phase of your life as a result of this feeling of things no longer being right for you. I think that it will create some kind of void at first, and then eventually the new thing will be filled in. It could be a period of transition, though, because Neptune is quite slow and it likes to take its time, and Saturn is slow too. So there could be a feeling of being in a transition or a liminal phase of your life as you're rebuilding or trying to figure out what this new calling is. Some people will already know what that new calling is, and maybe they've known for a long time, but they have felt intimidated or scared or unable to take the risk in their life to make that change. And Saturn-Neptune conjunction can indicate a life event or a circumstance that pushes them into that massive change. If there are systems in our life or in our society that are really unethical or that are really inauthentic, that are really out of whack with our soul's mission or with our sense of integrity, that will also be challenged with Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And we will be able to reevaluate that area of our life to see if there is something that we can do to make it more in alignment for ourselves. I think that there are also going to be a change of hands in our leadership. So there could be, on a personal level, people in your life that you look up to that no longer show up in the same way. They disappear or they're overthrown. So this could be super simple, like somebody on YouTube that you follow, like me, no longer appears on YouTube, and then a new person comes on YouTube that has a different way of presenting information and you follow them instead. Or it could be something larger, like obviously something going on with, a company or an education system or the governmental system or your family system, where there are change of hands when it comes to authority and responsibility with things. And there can be a crisis around those areas of your life. Ultimately, it is a lot around like who are we becoming, who are we transforming into, and there's some kind of major reset, and it's likely to happen for all of us on some level where we're at least influenced by kind of societal transformations at the time. However, if it's impacting your chart on a personal level, like I mentioned, then you're going to really notice that something pivotal in your life, foundational in your life, will transform and change over time. If you have any important planets or even your ascendant around those degrees that I mentioned, you want to be more careful with your health, because both of these planets are not the best when it comes to our health. And so we just want to make sure that any issues around kind of like our adrenal function or just, the way that we take care of our body, we want to make sure that the stress of life isn't depleting our well-being. So any kind of area of your life can get some kind of major reboot. The way that you invest in things or the way that you do things could totally change. And ultimately, I think that many people will have like an ego death as they transition through these changes, because they are going to no longer be able to, identify as that kind of person, or say that's what they do for a living, or, go to work every day like that. And I'm just using work as an example, but you wrap your life all around something and then you remove that, and it can create this kind of egoic backlash and crisis, and mental health things can arise and physical health things can arise. So I think it's going to be a time, again, of really major transition that could feel challenging to us on many different planes of existence. So definitely make sure you check out the video that I'm going to be doing for that later. If you haven't subscribed to my email list, you can check it out in my description box down below. That way that when I actually post that video and it goes live, I will email it to you so you can make sure that you get it, because it might be a second. I am taking a while to record it. I already did part of it, but it's going to take me a while to do the rest. But I'm going to go through and kind of look at what that's going to be like for each sign. One other quick note, I want you guys to be careful that there is not that you don't give up too much of yourself with Saturn and Neptune, because Neptune is very prone to martyrdom and to self-sacrifice. And there could be things that we do as individuals that feels like we're trying to, give up something for somebody else. Or, yes, I think, with Aries, it could be that we are the opposite, where we're kind of trying to take things for ourselves. But sometimes we can go in the other extreme, where we give up too much of our sense of individuality or our own freedom for something. So also be aware of that, because we want to make sure that there is a healthy balance of the individual self and not the over construction of it or deconstruction of it. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, up next we have Jupiter moving into Cancer. This is going to be happening on June 9th, actually just a few days after my birthday, 2025, and it's going to stay there until June 29th of 2026. So I am excited about Jupiter in Cancer. I think it's going to go well, especially for my fellow Cancers. And I say fellow because my Mercury is in Cancer. But Jupiter is exalted in the sign. So I think it's going to go well for everyone to some extent to have the support of Jupiter here, especially with all these other crazy happenings going on that are not as positive. So I think that this is going to give us some reprieve. Jupiter in Cancer is going to help us focus on taking care of ourselves in many different ways. We have had the birth rate decline significantly. That is likely to still keep going, especially with Saturn moving into Aries. However, for this 1 year, we could get a little bit of a reprieve in seeing a little bit more focus on the family unit. More people might have children. There could be just higher rates of fertility overall. So people who have been struggling to have children might find that this year in particular is great for that. Women's issues and reproductive rights could become a very central focus for all of us, and we could find some advancement in that area, though we could also have pushback with Saturn and Aries. So it's kind of hard to tell what is going to win out. But Jupiter in Cancer does show that there is some support here for women's rights overall, especially just women's issues in general. We could also be exploring what is home for us. Some of us could be moving. Some of us could be wondering how connected we feel to our country, to our families, to the place that we're physically living. And we could start to ask questions about what would it look like to grow in different ways and explore different avenues of my home. And that could mean that you grow out of family connections because you realize that they're toxic, for example, and you find family through friends. That could mean that you move countries and you find your kind of rootedness in a different place. But there's a sense of belonging and connection and love that we're going to explore through a different lens. And that can mean sometimes leaving behind previous definitions of what that looks like for you or previous commitments to that area of your life. Again, patriotism and the focus on an individual's country can become something that we talk more about, something that we think more about. We could be focusing more on the nurturing of ourselves and potentially more empathy, more compassion. Again, this will be also mitigated by Saturn and Aries, which is cutthroat in its own energy. So I don't know like how this is going to manifest as we combine both of these things. But if you think back, the last time Jupiter was in Cancer was in 2013, 2014. And this was when Black Lives Matter was really picking up steam and becoming really a widespread movement. And I feel like, yes, this I think has a lot to do with the more kind of Aquarius energy, which is, representing the equality of each individual that we have in our country. But there's also something about the Cancer element here of, having empathy for somebody else's plight, having, this desire to take care of all of our people, not just some of our people. And I think Jupiter in Cancer can really highlight that. I think we can ultimately have some major shifts and again, periods of growth in our beliefs and our ideologies and around family, like I mentioned. And I think many of us are going to be moving into a more feminine energy and an intuitive energy. So instead of having this kind of maybe set way of doing things like Capricorn, like this is what's expected of us, there can be a little bit more of this ability to flow here a little bit. I mean, obviously Saturn and Aries can, again, overwrite some of this, but we might notice that we are able to trust our own instincts around what we really need for ourselves. And I think that makes sense with Saturn and Aries. My gut is telling me this. I feel like I really need to do this for myself. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And Pluto and Aquarius as well really matches with that kind of sense of respecting your individual nature, your unique, authentic nature. And I think many of us could also be healing from childhood wounds, be overcoming issues with our past and emotional ties to our past, things that have really bogged us down or that have really frustrated us or really made us angry or upset or sad or whatever words you want to use. And Saturn and Aries can help us do something about it. Jupiter and Cancer can too. It's a cardinal sign as well. So this is a time of kind of moving with your emotions, taking action from an inspired and intuitive place. And there is that sense of feminine energy as well, where you're also able to magnetize things to you, and you're also able to learn how to better receive nurturing, receive love as well. So I'm excited about Jupiter in Cancer. I think it's going to be uplifting for us, and especially my Cancers, you're going to benefit the most from this type of energy. The last event I'm going to talk about is Uranus moving into Gemini, which is happening on July 7th, 2025. And Uranus will stay there for about 7 years, where it will stay until probably around 2033. I have to check if it goes in and out, but that's around the time where it's going to end. So what is Uranus in Gemini going to do for us? Uranus is a very stimulating planet, and it's moving into an air sign. Previously, it's been in Taurus, which is a dense earth sign, one of the slowest earth signs. What does that do? It can create a little bit of a slowdown in terms of innovation and progress. Now that it's moving into an air sign, we're going to have things accelerate exponentially. So this is going to look like a total change in the way that we send and receive ideas and communication. There is going to be some kind of innovation that happens here. And this could look like, for example, Starlink becoming a lot more prominent and everybody in the whole world becoming digitally connected. Obviously, there could be some outliers, but everyone having access to the internet, everyone having access to satellites, to cell towers, whatever, could be possible as a result of Uranus moving through Gemini. There could be some really big changes in the way that we consume our media. For example, we might start to distrust our modern day media, like our normal journalists. There could be slow degradation of those systems, and people starting to turn to individuals as a resource. So people on social media, we're already seeing that happening, but I think that they can take on a whole new level basically during Uranus and Gemini. I think that social media platforms will continue to rise, and I think that more will be created. A lot of us are going to need to hold on to our britches, because there's going to be a lot of fast-paced movement. We're going to have to be able to adapt to the change in technology and the change in communication and social media and these new belief systems that we're all going to be hearing ideas about and things of that nature. So I think that we're going to be, again, moving very, very quickly. One of the things I'm excited about of Uranus and Gemini is the reliance a little bit more on logic when it comes to hopefully certain things online, because I feel like there is a lot going on the online world that is not fact checked. Via social media, we're just getting people's opinions, this and that. I'm hoping that Uranus and Gemini will create more technology that will help create unbiased media or fact checking systems to be able to see at a glance what is legitimate or certain facts associated with what people are communicating. Uranus is all about freedom, and it wants the authenticity, the kind of rebellious nature of the individual to have a purpose in creating that freedom and an emancipation from maybe a restrictive or outdated authority. So we could see last time that Uranus was in Gemini, we were having we were actually having a lot of unfortunate things going on. We were having World War II, Pearl Harbor, Japan attacking Pearl Harbor, D-Day, Nazi Germany surrendering, which is obviously a good thing, atomic bombing of Hiroshima, the United Nations was founded, which is a good thing, and then the beginning of the Cold War. So we have a lot of really historical events that show war, that show, again, this kind of rebelliousness of people saying, like people taking action, like I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to make a change because I want to make a change. And a lot of what's going on with our astrology up until this point is pointing in that direction. If you've watched the other videos, you can see it's about people taking the power back into their own hands. And Uranus and Gemini is an accelerating force of that. And it's going to help people maybe even do that through, the internet, for example. Like people's rebelliousness can come through their like sharing of their opinions online. And you can even see this in the UK. People are getting arrested, even the US. People are getting arrested for freedom of speech, for things that they say on the phone or things that they say online that are not something that you would think that they would get arrested for. And there is this push towards freedom, but there's also going to be a push back against that. So I think ultimately we can see that clash happen through potential war, or some kind of digital warfare of some sort. I definitely think we're going to see innovation in the area of science overall, which we've definitely talked about with Pluto and Aquarius with technology, but all kinds of science. And this could look like, for example, with medicine, having like more personalized medicine to your genes. Like we can already start to see this with, nutrition for your blood type, but I think people are going to be actually getting like their human genome. They're going to have it all sorted and look at what they're predisposed to, maybe certain medical care for certain things. I think we're going to start to see advancements like that. Travel, I think we're going to see advancements with flying cars. I know that is already being created right now. Electronic vehicles, old news at this point. It's going to become more of a thing. 15-minute cities, faster paced life, something where there's more interconnectedness, however that looks like, via transportation or otherwise. So I don't know if it's going to take on those forms or something else, but I know it's going to be very, very fast paced. Like, you send a message and it's immediately received. I mean, obviously that's already going on, but that's going to take on a new light, or that instantaneous level of communication is going to transfer into other sectors where there is slower communication. So for example, if there's government things that you still have to, send physical paperwork into, there's going to be a point to where we become more and more detached from the physical and more in the mental and technological plane, because Gemini is an air sign. It's the waves, right? The waves of the Wi-Fi and the 5G or whatever. So we're not going to be as rooted where Uranus and Taurus was working on its changes before. I think also learning, teaching, all those things are going to go through a detachment from the physical world as well. So instead of maybe going to university, I think more and more people are going to be doing online degrees, or are going to be doing other forms of e-learning, different types of maybe collective learning platforms, or maybe there will be decentralized knowledge so that you don't even have to pay and it's just accessible to everybody. There could be instruction through augmented reality. Maybe kids won't even go to the physical classroom anymore. I know that already some teachers are using AI to prepare their lessons, their lectures. So imagine how it's going to advance in the next 7 years as Uranus is moving through the sign. We're going to become more and more reliant on those, again, detached, immaterial online resources. I also think that, we're going to be coming up with our own kind of alternative viewpoints to things. And there are going to be a little bit more disruptive opinions that come out as Uranus moves through Gemini, and everybody's going to have their own opinion. It could be a little bit chaotic, if I'm being honest. Uranus is chaos, and then Gemini is all about like gossip and again, talking to other people, sharing ideas. So you can see how there can be just all these opinions being thrown around about different situations that I think is going to cause a little bit of this strong network, literally like we're becoming a hive mind, like a neural network, but then also how that can become really jumbled and chaotic. And we're going to have to use our discernment about when to slow down, when to shut off. I think that there could also be, again, some change in governments or in policies or political movements, because Gemini, of course, rules, like I was talking about in many ways, like the hive mind or the mind. So if we are introducing some disruptive viewpoints to the mind and things shift really quickly, there are the potential for policies. Maybe it won't shift really that quickly, but the implementation of it on the individual level can happen really fast, especially on the digital level. And of course, AI will completely disrupt work. If you haven't watched Pluto and Aquarius, check that out because I talk more about that. So yes, I think we're going to have some kind of potential for conflict. I think that's more so related to Saturn, Neptune, and Aries, but Uranus and Gemini is the rebelliousness, and Pluto and Aquarius is also the rebelliousness that we need to kind of stand up for things. So I think that we're going to enter into a period of a little bit more of that disruptive kind of chaotic energy, shared information, things going a mile a minute. But I also think it's going to help us advance in many ways and share ideas for innovative technologies, for innovative ways to do things that I think could be beneficial for society as well. So if you have any planets in Gemini or any angles on Gemini, this is going to be a really big time for you, where many things in your personal life are going to shake up as a result of this. I will do a video specifically on this for all signs, so just definitely wait for that. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this 2025 overview. If so, please let me know in the comments down below what you think about what's coming up this year. If you have anything planned, or if you have interpreted anything maybe in an additional way, or if you see it differently, I would love to hear kind of what you guys think about all these different transits. Maybe there's something that I missed that you guys want to share. Please do subscribe to my email list so you can see all of the videos come out related to these topics where I break them down more for all the signs and go a little bit more nuanced. So definitely check that out. I hope you guys subscribe, like this video, comment down below, and have a beautiful day. Bye.